Meet Daniel and Marcus, not a winner and a loser, just two guys, 31 years old, both pulling in $72,000 a year, both sitting on $60,000 they scraped together after a decade of cheap apartments and canceled trips. Same starting line, two completely different ideas about what that money should become. Day 1. Daniel puts his $60,000 down on a $310,000 duplex. Marcus dumps his into a broad market ETF and sets up a $250 auto transfer. Daniel gets keys, a mortgage, and a tenant who moves in within 2 weeks. Marcus gets a confirmation email and closes the app without looking back. One of these feels like an achievement you can drive past. The other feels like nothing at all happened. Daniel's coworkers keep asking how the property's doing. Nobody's ever once asked Marcus a thing about his portfolio. On paper, Daniel already looks like the guy who figured it out. That feeling doesn't mean much yet, though.
Year 3. Daniel's pulled in about $75,600 in rent, paid roughly $56,000 toward the mortgage, and on paper, that's close to $19,000 ahead. Then reality starts sending invoices. Property tax, insurance, a month with no tenant, a water heater that picked the worst possible time to die. Plus, every Saturday he spent fixing something instead of relaxing. That $19,000 quietly turns into maybe $4,000 or $5,000 real dollars, and his own hours were never even part of that math. Marcus, meanwhile, has done exactly one thing for 3 straight years: nothing. His $250 leaves his account month after month, and he doesn't think about it much. His $60,000 has grown to somewhere around $88,000. No tenants, no calls at 9 p.m. But Daniel's got one card Marcus doesn't have: leverage. He controlled a $310,000 asset with a fraction of that in cash, and now sits on something like $95,000 to $100,000 in equity. That's the piece the stock market just can't hand you. Still, collecting rent was never the same thing as keeping it.
Year 5. Daniel isn't the wide-eyed new landlord anymore. He's the guy who's been through it. 2 tenant turnovers, a roof patch job that turned into a full replacement, a stretch where the unit sat empty longer than he'd planned for. Rents crept up to around $2,150 a month, but so is everything else attached to owning the place. When he actually does the math, his real return lands somewhere around 4%. Decent, but a long way from the 15 to 20% people casually throw around online like it's guaranteed. Marcus's account is still doing the one thing it's always done. Absolutely nothing exciting. $250 a month, rain or shine, headline or no headline. Somewhere in there, without any fanfare, the compounding starts quietly picking up speed.
Year 7. Marcus crosses $135,000, and something changes under the surface. The growth in a single year is starting to outpace what he's actually putting in himself. Daniel's wealth still needs him. His weekends, his patience with contractors, his phone left on just in case. Marcus's wealth needs nothing from him but that one recurring transfer. One guy is trading hours for equity. The other is just trading time for time. Year 10. Daniel's equity now sits somewhere between $190,000 and $220,000 after roughly $35,000 spent over the years keeping the place standing. Marcus has put in about $90,000 of his own money and watched it turn into somewhere around $195,000 to $210,000. The rest built entirely by the market while he wasn't paying attention. Close enough that you could argue about it over drinks. But one of them is still carrying a 6-figure loan tied to a single building on a single street. The other owns a sliver of thousands of companies at once, something he could sell with 2 taps on his phone if he ever needed to.
Year 20. Daniel's duplex is worth somewhere close to $580,000 now. His equity, around $410,000. And over 2 decades, he's pocketed roughly $135,000 in actual cash flow after every expense that ever came his way. Marcus has personally put in about $120,000 over that same stretch. The other $450,000 or so just showed up. No tenants, no repairs, no debt attached to it. Final tally, Daniel lands around $545,000. Marcus lands around $570,000. Two guys, 20 years, nearly the same number, and they got there walking in completely opposite directions.
Here's what none of those numbers actually show you. Daniel gave up weekends. Marcus gave up nothing but the temptation to check his balance every day. Daniel's whole bet lived in one neighborhood, tied to one market's mood swings. Marcus's bet was scattered across an entire economy, immune to any single bad tenant or bad decision. And neither one will admit this at a party, but both of them were only half right, and both of them paid a price for it somewhere. Stocks dropped nearly 40% back in 2008 and lost over 30% in a few brutal weeks in 2020. A $150,000 portfolio might only spit out $250 or so a month in dividends, nowhere close to covering a life. Leverage cuts the other way too. The same debt that built Daniel's equity could have buried him just as easily if the timing had gone differently. So who actually won here? That's the wrong thing to be asking, honestly. It was never really about the asset. It's about whether you counted everything. The money, sure, but also the hours, the stress, the years that don't come back around twice. There's no perfect investment sitting out there waiting to be discovered. There's only the one that actually fits the life you're trying to build.
You don't need $310,000 or a tenant's number saved in your phone to start something this week. You just need one decision about where your next $200 goes. Open whatever app you keep putting this off in. Pick the path that actually matches who you are, not the one that looks good at dinner. Make the transfer before you talk yourself out of it again.